So in the wild west of AI, we are now at the stage where we can connect an AI LLM like Claude or Codex or loads of others directly to Bricks Builder. I've been testing one particular approach in this video with a mind towards my typical non-coder audience. So these are people who are going to struggle with code and working in GitHub repos and stuff like that, but are going to be perfectly comfortable prompting in their usual AI chat tool of choice. The question is, can this approach produce a site that follows my design system, that follows the processes and the workflow that I use and teach, which without AI already produce sites that are fairly quick and efficient to build and are a doddle to scale and maintain? Well, let's see. Now, we cannot connect an AI LLM directly to Bricks natively just yet. To do this right now, we are going to need a third-party tool, Novamira Pro, which is paid but very inexpensive, but I'll get back to this in a moment. It is worth saying here that just before this, I did actually have a play with what is possible with Bricks natively right now, the HTML and CSS to Bricks feature, which came out a little while ago. I tested this with Claude, dropped in a screenshot, asked it to produce the HTML and CSS to create the attached design. I did explain the context in which this is going to be used, and admittedly, at this stage, no other instructions or context. But yeah, sure enough, it gave me some HTML code, some CSS. That code was this, which, of course, understandably, without any instructions or context, is really inefficient. It's not following any kind of design system whatsoever, using pixels for font sizes, all kinds of things which are absolute no-nos. Now, I'm a stubborn guy. I didn't want to be defeated. I wanted to see just how far we could take this current Bricks native approach. And so then I spent far longer than I should on this, actually working backwards and forwards with Claude to produce these instructions to try to get its HTML and CSS output to follow my system, my design system, my specific rules for how I like to build websites, an understanding of how Bricks works, and of course, to cut a long story short, this just didn't really work. No matter how many instructions I gave Claude, which to its credit did produce much better quality code, we just couldn't ever get a satisfactory result actually in Bricks itself. And this is exactly why we need to use an MCP like Novamira, which is going to allow our AI agent to actually work directly inside our WordPress and Bricks install. If you've not heard of an MCP before, stands for Model Context Protocol, one for the nerds, but it's basically, you can think of it as like a go-between or a middleman between your AI tool and your software or platform of choice. Now, there are other MCPs for WordPress other than Novamira. In fact, Automatic themselves have an MCP server that you can use as a plugin. However, they all only work directly with WordPress. The beauty of Novamira is that it not only works directly with WordPress, but will also work directly with Bricks as well. So the free version, completely free, builds inside WordPress. It provides full access for your AI agent to build in WordPress, do things like add posts and pages and manage images, go find images, create content, create custom post types, custom fields, custom taxonomies. You download that for free here on the website. It's not on the WordPress repo, I don't think. However, for our purposes, we are going to need the Pro version. It's very inexpensive. I mean, you can get it from 49 euros a year, which I think is an absolute bargain. And what Novamira Pro adds to the free version, which you install separately, by the way, so you install the free and the Pro, it opens up access for your AI agent to work directly in Bricks specifically, and Elementor if you so desire, but also to integrate directly with plugins like ACF, Jet Engine, Metabox, etc., which you can then use your AI agent to ask to create custom post types, custom fields, create relationships between post types, all those kind of things. So let's just quickly pop over to this WordPress install I have here. This is actually the case study project that we've been building in my Bricks Accelerator program. But you can see here, I have the two plugins installed. There's the free version and then also the Pro version. You need both. With those installed, if we just come up over here into Novamira, now I'm going to look into how to set it up and particularly why it is so useful when working with AI. But first, just to have a look at AI abilities. So here you can see there's an absolute load of different abilities that Novamira provides your AI agent to be able to work directly in your WordPress site. Lots of them here. Deleting files, editing files, all kinds of WordPress related stuff. But then also the Pro, these are the Pro abilities. You can see here like lots of abilities for working with ACF. And I just keep scrolling down. There is a ton of them. Here are the bricks ones, adding interactions, adding color palettes, creating components, creating global classes, basically all the stuff that we will be doing manually inside Bricks ourselves. Oh, just quickly, it is worth saying that at the time of recording this video anyway, Bricks are working on their own MCP server that I assume will be free and will come with Bricks. Now, that is much needed, definitely. It's a good thing. However, it will also fairly likely only actually directly integrate with Bricks itself. So one of the benefits of a third-party tool like Novamira is that it actually not only allows you to integrate your AI with Bricks, to be able to talk to Bricks and build things in Bricks, but also your entire WordPress install as well, all from one MCP server connection in your chat. So that is a big advantage over what Bricks will likely be providing. I'm not entirely sure yet. I suppose it is worth saying as well that typically third-party add-ons tend to be more fully featured than the native features that come with Bricks. Anyway, let's get this thing set up. I will say here that I am not going to be going into some kind of deep dive, step-by-step walkthrough of every single step of the process. If that will be interesting to you though, drop me a comment below and let me know. But the actual setup and install is pretty easy. Once you have the two plugins installed, come up to the Novamira menu up here into configuration. You will want to turn on AI abilities for this site, but only if this particular install is either a development site or a staging site. Do not, and I repeat, do not install any MCP server of any kind on a live website. You do not want your AI having complete access to do whatever it likes on a live site. Chaos could ensue, and probably will. So if this is a live site, you would turn this off, but otherwise turn it on. This is fine. This particular install is actually a development project. It actually isn't the live project, so that is absolutely fine. Next thing to do is just create an application password. You could give this a label if you like. I am actually going to be using this particularly with Claude Desktop, so I could give it that label or anything that makes sense to me, and then click Generate Application Password. I have actually generated other application passwords before, just during my testing. That's what those are here. However, you will only actually see this password once, so it is a good idea to copy it and paste it somewhere safe. And then once you have that, you then scroll down, and the final job is just to connect to your AI client. And until this particular version of Novamira, I think you actually needed to grab the particular connection config JSON code for your particular AI solution, and then update an actual config file on your own computer's operating system, which wasn't particularly difficult. However, now you can just copy this prompt, paste this into a new AI chat, and hopefully it will handle the configuration and connection for you. Nice and easy. Just before I retrospectively walk you through the chat that I then next went on to have with Claude, I just want to give you some quick background about this particular install for context. This is the case study project that we build in my Bricks Accelerator program. This particular project already has a range of designs and styles and a design system that we use throughout the program. And so this particular install already has a range of global theme styles and a variables-based fluid design system and classes and a color palette, and most importantly, a very particular philosophy and method of building that I need my AI LLM, Claude, I'm going to be using in this case, that I absolutely need it to follow. And the way we do that is by building up this MCP's memory and instructions for this particular site. And this is the secret sauce, as they say. So as well as the abilities that come with Novamira, that ship with Novamira by default, you can also add your own custom instructions for your AI agent LLM to follow based on your conventions and the way that you like to do things. And so here I mean, this box was completely blank on a fresh install, of course, but gradually building up these instructions essentially codifies my workflow, training the AI in my workflow and processes and the best practices that I use and teach. And if you think I spent hours manually typing all of that stuff up, think again. I actually had Claude do it all for me. So I started a chat with Claude, connected to the MCP. I will show you this in a moment, by the way, retrospectively, all the way from the top. But started a chat and we worked backwards and forwards, me providing prompts, Claude asking me questions, trying out things in bricks, me picking up issues, and it actually updated the custom instructions for me, which was great. Each time, further reducing the chance of any mistakes from that point on. But as well as custom instructions, we also have memories as well. And if you've been using AI at all, you know that it has a memory. It stores memories of things that you've told it, things that it needs to bear in mind for future conversations. That is basically the same here, but as part of your install in the database and actually shared with all AI agents connecting to this MCP. And Claude updated these automatically as well as we went along. So for example, we have some feedback here. We have some notes on Dave's working style and preferences from a beach with a cocktail, preferably, and a few other things as well. All really useful stuff. So let's have a look at that chat now. As I said, I want to keep this video fairly short. So in this particular video, I'm not going to be starting from scratch and doing all of this step by step. I'm just in Claude Desktop here. You could use Claude Code or Codex or Gemini or loads of other options. Now, after my initial setup, which if I just show you in Claude settings, what that did, if I come down to developer, that added this local MCP server. And so now Claude can connect to this server and do its thing on our site. The problem was when I first installed this actually said failed. And I had error messages here about the fact that the server was disconnected. And so what I did was, let's just come back into the main screen again, and I'll find the chat that I was in. That is this one. Now I actually started off the conversation just saying the MCP server is this one, this name. Just tell me why it's not connecting. Claude came up with a few ideas. So then I asked Claude just to check its logs for this MCP. Do they suggest anything? It's basically saying yes, on your Mac, you don't have npx node.js installed, and it just gave me instructions on exactly how to do it. So if you're on a Mac or Windows, I guess, and you have an error with the server not connecting, the connection failing, it might be that you don't have node.js installed on your machine. Just ask Claude how to do it. Once that's done, yeah, here's me getting quite excited. I just asked, can you tell me which MCP servers I have connected? It told me which one. Okay. And then just to see that everything was working, just to give it a test, tell me what version of WordPress this is, what themes and plugins I have installed. Okay. So it went off and did that, which was great. I asked it a few other things here and it pulled in some of the details already for me. So I confirmed it could see theme styles, just some default theme styles. It pulled all those in for me just as proof of concept. I asked it to pull in my variables, or should I say, Claude asked me if it should pull in our global variables. I said, yes, please. I always say please. Hopefully the AI overlords will remember when they take over. This is a beautifully structured design system. Why, thank you, Claude. Nice of you to say. So it pulls in all of that as well. It's all great. Confirming that it can access everything already on the website. Same thing with our variable-based color palette. Then I started just initially giving a few rules and suggestions for how I like to work. And then I remembered actually that big long document that I worked on Claude with, which happened to be yesterday at the time. That was when using HTML and CSS to bricks. So I actually just pasted all that in. Claude pulled out all the appropriate stuff to add into instructions and memory, keeping the stuff that was relevant for this MCP workflow and basically ditching the rest of it that we don't need. So yeah, we discard all of this stuff here. We'll keep this stuff here. We'll update this stuff here. Claude then offered to draft the custom instructions text and the initial memory entries. It was great. And all sorts of stuff here as well. Some draft custom instructions, which is fine. And some draft memories. This is the one, for example, about my working style and preferences. Actually, No mention of the beach or cocktails there, I see. I'm going to have a word. But anyway, and we went on, backwards and forwards, having a bit of fun here with 80s classic pop songs. I said, you do the memories, I'll do the instructions. Let's make lots of money. If you get the reference, you get the reference. And then I think at this point, I started to suggest that Claude actually update the instructions itself. I wasn't sure if it could do it or not, somewhere around here anyway. And then at this point, we started building a section. This was a hero header section from our Figma designs. And actually, if I just come back into there, which one would that have been? I think this was from this particular design here. Let's just zoom in a little bit. All I did was just click this particular section. I chose this one because it's a fairly basic layout, pretty much 2-column, but it does require quite a bit of understanding of the particular structure that I like to follow. So for example, here we have a section. It should actually be 2 separate containers. Inside that section, we always have the default padding for sections coming through from theme styles. We don't override that unless we absolutely need to. Certain rules about how we always use gutters on sections as well. How we use content gap variables with flex row gap between elements vertically, never margins, or at least not between elements anyway. All kinds of things. So I just exported this section out, dragged it in and said, let's have a go. And I mean, I won't labour the point, but you get the idea. We went backwards and forwards. Claude had a go. I wanted to make sure that it had followed the instructions. There's quite a few things I needed to give it feedback about. It updated the instructions itself. Oh, actually, no, here is the bit where I actually said, are you able to update the instructions on the site as well? I had no idea if it could or not. But yeah, it could. That was great. That made things a lot easier from that point onwards. I then tried this other layout. This one's a little bit more complicated. Where is it? It's this one here, I think. So with this one, well, we know we have cards. We have a card grid. Because it is a list of posts, we've certainly got some essential accessibility requirements to make sure that we cover. I also have some variables in the design system for creating automatically responsive grids, so we don't need to mess around with breakpoints. So I wanted to see if it would pick those things up as well. And again, it went off and did that, and we incrementally improved the instructions and the memories as we went along. So that's all great. But now let's have a look at the job that it did in Bricks and how well it managed to follow my instructions. And I must say, it has actually done a pretty good job so far. So here we have a section. It's actually followed my basic guidance on creating containers inside sections for different rows of content. So we have a container here. Seems to follow my instructions as well to never add any extra styles to containers. Just let actual container elements in Bricks just do the job that they're designed to do. And even on sections as well. This is just a default section with default section padding, all coming from theme styles. Again, follow my instructions exactly there, which is excellent. And actually the gap between containers is also being handled by section styles in theme styles as well. So it shouldn't, if it's followed my instructions, great. It's not actually added a content gap or actually a container gap variable from our design system, which is excellent. It's also on the container set that to be a grid container. So that is avoided adding extra nested elements for no need, which is what it was doing previously. It's used our variables for grid gap in exactly the way I told it. It's used one of my grid variables, which is excellent. And we just open this up a little bit. Let's have a look at what we've got. And great. Yeah, we have an H1 heading. It's giving it a class of hero heading. That's fine. We're purposefully avoiding BEM and indeed using classes a huge amount at this stage for reasons I haven't got time to go into here. But if I come into style, it's set typography on there. Now, there's one thing that it's done wrong here. It's actually used our text dark variable. It actually has instructions for if that style is set in theme styles by default, which it is for H1s. In fact, all headings are set to this color. Then the instruction was don't use that variable again because it's redundant. So I'll have a little word with Claude. But yeah, font size is used our appropriate font size. So it's actually set correctly an H1 HTML tag, but it's setting its size to one size bigger in our fluid text size system, which is great. And then here we have this block, which is the second grid item. And yet, basic text, an actual bricks button, pulling in default theme styles again, and on the parent of these two child elements here, if I just come across the settings, into content, just having a look to see how this has been put together. Excellent. So it's actually created the gap between those two child elements with one of our content gap variables. Excellent stuff. This container here, I think I would probably go back to it and say, can you actually change these images from image elements to SVGs? Because in our original design, which is this one, let's try and zoom in if I can, come on trackpad. We actually do have SVGs in the media library for these anyway. I could have asked Claude to go and look for those in the media library had I had the presence of mind to do so. But again, it's all a bit of a learning curve for me and Claude. Well, this, isn't looking too bad. And then down here, we have our grid of cards, which is quite interesting to me to see how it's tackled those. So again, we have a section and our container in here, which is our grid. It's actually using one of our grid auto variables, which gives us a responsive grid without having to set different variables or different grid template columns at different breakpoints, which is excellent. Here are, well, basically each one of these is a card. And just looking, again, following my instructions, actually this is a list of posts. And so for accessibility, actually this container, the parent of each of these, should have had its HTML tag changed to a UL. Fantastic. I'm definitely going to let Claude stay up a bit later to watch more TV. And yeah, all our grid stuff is in there as well. Each one of these blocks should be an LI because it is a list item. That is awesome. Really like that. It's using row gap here as well with our row gap variables. This is looking great. And in here we have, I probably could have asked Claude to name our elements in the structure panel as well. That is something that I'll go back to see if we can do that. Fairly sure we'll be able to. And here, yeah, we have this image and probably ask it in here to set a specific aspect ratio so that they're all the same size. These are all things, by the way, that we can incrementally add to the instructions and just further improve the quality of Claude's output on the site. And then in here, this second block, okay, so this is like the content inside the card. We have a heading. It's followed my instructions here to make this into an H2. We never skip heading levels. So we have an H1 here. So these must be H2s. However, H2s don't actually look like this in theme styles. And so hopefully correctly, if we come to styles, brilliant. So it's actually set the font size of what these headings actually look like as H3. So they look like an H3, which is perfect for the design. Claude actually did that itself, decided that this was the nearest size variable to match the design most closely, but it's actually set the HTML tag itself in the structure as an H2. And all of that so far, quite frankly, is pretty impressive, I have to say. And then from that point, of course, I would have Claude build other elements, other layout elements from the site. I'd want to see if I could make it create proper accessible markup for this testimonial. That would be a challenge. And also start creating some templates as well, for our archives, for our default posts and our CPTs and single post templates as well. One other thing would be to get even more granular about some specifics. So for example, here, Claude has actually followed the design here. It's done as it was asked. However, one of the things that I teach for accessibility is not to have these view details or read more links. I left them there in the Figma file on purpose, just as a teaching point, but I might ask it to get rid of these view details links. Put the link on the H2 itself on all the cards. So that would be here, and actually add in just for now a custom URL. And then on that heading, add in one of our classes, which is clickable parent, which for accessibility now expands that link to cover the entire card. So the entire card becomes clickable. But that is all stuff for maybe a future video. I guess the one main thing that playing around with all this stuff has made me definitely realize is that AI, using AI in this way, makes having a solid workflow and understanding of web design fundamentals even more important, not less. I mean, this worked because AI and Claude, in this case, had the design system, the workflow, the process, all baked in. I think without that foundation In fact, I've found this already. You probably have as well. You just get chaos. It's like you get chaos, but just even faster. So AI definitely doesn't replace the need for you to know your stuff. And if you want to learn my best practice workflow for building quickly and efficiently in Bricks, enrollment is currently open for the next cohort of my Bricks Accelerator program. It is always absolutely bang up to date. I've dropped the link below. It is a 6-week program with a live small group of other Bricks users from around the world, all learning together. The system I teach here, like reusability, framework thinking, how to build an entire dynamic website with Bricks, this is exactly what made collaborating with AI work so well here. But what I've enjoyed about this process, so far anyway, is, well, firstly, being able to actually interact directly with my WordPress site and Bricks specifically just via prompts. That process is only going to get faster and more valuable as time goes on. Also, the ability for me to be able to train the AI on my own processes and workflows, which is only going to build value over time, over multiple projects. It's also a lot of fun. I actually had a great time just going backwards and forwards with this thing. What is not so great so far anyway is it is pretty slow. You send off a prompt, Claude goes off and does its thing. You often have to wait quite a while for the result to come back. And you could question whether, if you know your stuff already, is it going to be quicker for you to just go in and do it yourself? I would say at the moment, sometimes yes. And all of this still needs your guidance, your judgment, and having a solid best practice workflow and understanding without it. But as I say, this is the wild west of AI that we're in at the moment. Who knows where we're going to be even next week, let alone next year. I know, as I said, Bricks are developing their own native MCP server, so it'll be interesting to see what they come up with as well. But anyway, have you tried Novamira with Bricks or any other AI workflow that's working for you? Or are you avoiding web design and AI like the plague? I'd love to know. Let me know in the comments. And I'll see you soon.